Thanks for staying with us. So there is a law which supports persons with disabilities in Nigeria. But in reality, according to reports, people with disabilities still feel left out of being integrated into the society. Join us on the show to discuss implication of this at work and businesses. Is a stakeholder, Pastor Itwa Igodalo, in the building. And we have Mr. Adetoyoshe Abioye, also from the Disabilities Foundation. Welcome, gentlemen, to the show. Are you Pastor too?
Yes,
Okay, so Pastor, I do apologize. So you can call us on 070-8066-8014. You can also tweet to us at TVC Connect. Please hashtag YourViewTVC so we can read your tweets. Before we start talking about issues of disabilities, what are your general thoughts on the hot topic concerning Professor Wole Soyinka? Anybody want to say something?
Right. Thank you very much, Morayo. Thanks for having us. What I want to say is linked to the issues around disabilities. Because the young man that is in question is, I think his name is Tosin Odunfa or something like that. Or the hashtag, or somebody put in there.
A report saying that it wasn't him. He was just saying it hypothetically, that if it was the one that was there.
Yes.
That he,
So the reason why the guy requested or has that particular seat is because he suffers autism, which is a particular type of disability. Now, that narrative is missing even in all the general conversation on social media, everywhere, talking about that respect. If we understand issues around disability and you understand how a person with autism behaves, it's understandable how he has insisted, because the reason why he chose that seat, we're told, is that he would have fallen sick on the flight if he was not sitting next to a window seat. And that tells us a lot about how we view issues of persons with disabilities in the country. Because we don't even understand why an autistic person, why he's insisting that he has to be there.
Okay, just before we go ahead, we got reports, because we heard that review, but we got reports that it's possible, someone was actually speaking hypothetically, that possibly not the man's response, but either way, it's a good point to know disabilities.
Yes.
Now, I always take pride in the fact that when you come to TVC, it's disability friendly. Every corner, there are different, there are ramps all over the place for people living with disability. We even have somebody blind in the radio. We have quite a number of people who work in TVC with disabilities. But in your own quest to ensure that people living with disabilities are properly integrated, what are you doing now? What do you hope to do, especially in businesses and companies?
Well, we are grateful that right now the Disability Act is in effect. And what has happened is that a lot of people misconstrue disability. They think because some people have challenges, they are incapable in several other areas. Right. Some even people think that they are untouchable. And some people think that they are confined to the streets of begging. But the truth of the matter is that the God that creates these people creates them with special abilities in spite of what seems to be a challenge. And what we're trying to do is that it's important that we create room for them. We allow them their time in the sun, and we look for that special ability that each one of them has to prop them up and ensure they can fulfill their purpose. From a spiritual perspective, everybody has a purpose, and there must be room, especially in Nigeria. And that's why overseas, abroad, I heard you talking about places like that. There's special consideration given to such people, and that's what we're trying to do.
So we have a challenge with the laws, that this law has, we just make laws, but we don't have apparatus to hold companies accountable for not doing it and encouraging and incentivizing those that do it. So blind, we've had someone that came in that was blind. We had a group of blind people that said that Nigeria is one of the most difficult places for blind people to go around because we are not friendly. We don't have that ecosystem that encourages someone that has visual impairments to move around. What is your organization doing to pressure maybe public transport system, creating awareness for people to know these are the signs of someone with visual impairment? If you see this, this is what you should do. Generally preparing us to be better caregivers for those with visual impairment and other disabilities.
Right, okay, no, thank you. I think that's also where we talk about the implications for workplaces, businesses, and other stakeholders, the realities of the Nigerian disability law. In actual fact, it's called the Discrimination Against Persons with Disabilities Prohibition Act 2018. Now, that law makes certain provisions that it is an offense to discriminate against people living with disabilities. Now, how do we even get people to understand and appreciate what the issues are? So first and foremost, from an advocacy point of view, our focus as a foundation is over the next 5 years, because part of the provisions of the law is that every physical infrastructure or building must have amenities for people with disabilities. So if you don't have it, you've got 5 years. If your HR policies are not speaking to that.
Your building before.
So we will do a disability audit. And I did when I came in. One of your security officers saw me when I was taking a photograph. And interestingly, when I tell people some languages that we don't need to use, when we talk about disability-friendly environment, you call it a disabled parking. Is it the parking that is disabled or you're parking for person with disability? So that even the right language, the right messaging must go out. So it's not the parking that is disabled. The person is not disabled. He's only living with a disability in there. So that even in terms of how we get that. So first and foremost, I think the awareness, advocacy, partnerships with organizations like yourselves, media, social media should get out to spread that message. That information is not out there yet. And then in terms of enforcing, now we want to work on the power of social media. We've got a hashtag, name and shame. So if we come to your building or come to your premises, you're not compliant with what the law says, we write to you, we speak to you about it, why don't you do something? Rather than spend the time going on litigation. The law makes provision for litigation to go to court, but the wheels of justice grind slowly. So we will rather use social media campaign. If we put it on there and say, oh, TVC is compliant with issues of disability. So disability audits or infrastructure audits, for instance, then it goes viral. The same way, if the organization is not compliant, that message goes out all across. And I think social media naming and shaming is much more powerful than having to go and say you want to go and enforce in the court of law.
So I've had a conversation with an employer of labor who said that once you come in to apply for a job and you're disabled, you don't stand a chance, because even the able people are finding it difficult to do the job, not talk of a disabled person. And I got into a very heated argument with him. And what came out of that argument was the fact that a lot of people have that mindset that disabled people are not to, you're not to take them serious. Yes, they're second class. So what more do you think your organization and with your partnerships can do to change the mindsets of people? Because the thing is, even if we have all the laws on ground to show that we accept disabled persons, and you come into an organization, you don't see one disabled person, you should know that at the gates we send them away, probably. So how do we change that mindset?
Right, okay. So part of it is that we're having some conversations with the personnel managers and HR people, human resources people. Because I think if the HR manager or HR director doesn't get it, then it's difficult for organizations to be able to get it. So if the HR manager gets it and your policies are reflecting, so for instance, when people place adverts in newspapers, in other climes that you talk about, there is always a line that says, people with disabilities are encouraged to apply for these positions. And I've checked all through newspapers in Nigeria. None. So that in itself, you're already excluding people living with disabilities to apply. And people who live with disabilities, most of the time, many of them were not born with disabilities. There are people who had accidents. People like Professor Chino Achebe was not born with a disability. He went to the US, came to Nigeria, had an accident, became wheelchair-bound, right? So there are people, and there are many cases like that.
When there are things you need to consider, companies also consider issues of costs.
Yes.
Cost of caring or ensuring that people living with disabilities are comfortable. It's a huge cost on the part of the employer, and lots of people are not willing to take in that investment. I know, as I said, I can say it anywhere. TVC invests a lot to ensure we have the parking spaces for people in that. We have the ramps everywhere. In fact, there's someone that used to report to me. She was in a wheelchair, and her team was taken upstairs, and she has to stay downstairs. Now, it's difficult for her to work with the team, and they're upstairs. So my CEO did everything to find some kind of ramp to get her to lift her upstairs to her team. They went through cost over cost. Okay, how do we get the most affordable equipment to lift this person? Just because of one person, one staff, he was willing to invest that amount of money. Unfortunately, it was so high a cost. He had to say, you know what? Temporarily, you have to manage. You stay downstairs, your team wants to have a meeting with you, they come downstairs. So that's how it is right now, because of the cost implication of just ensuring that this disability person
incentivize it.
Because the downstairs was the news crew and upstairs was it was difficult to get that to happen.
But what we need really is a lot of orientation and reorientation. For instance, that gentleman that you are speaking about, our team can go have a conversation with him, give him track record, give him empirical evidence, calm him down, reassure him that in fact some of the best people that you can work with are people living with disabilities. others, you know. They're a bit more regular, they're a bit more consistent, they're very, very intelligent, they're gifted in other areas. You know, there was a guy, he was on drugs, went blind, used to come and see me in church. He could cross the expressway, 8 lanes, all by himself, unaided. So I asked him one day, I said, how do you do that? He says his feet can feel the traffic. So with his feet, he can feel the vibrations of the traffic and judge exactly where the cars are, where they're coming from. So God has a way. I have a blind guy also who can describe to you how to get to his house, even down to the bolly cellar on your left. Says when you pass that bolly cellar, then you see a bump, then you go left. He described it to me perfectly. So a lot of them are very gifted.
Good morning, are you there? Thanks for calling.
Joanna, good morning.
Morning.
My name is Joanna.
Yes, go ahead.
I want to share, I'm a mother of a child with disability.
Okay.
So I want to share with you about the topic I'm listening to now.
Yes.
I'm calling from Abuja. I'm a first caller.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you. With my experience as a mother of a child with disability, my child is 18 years now. My child was mishandled in National Hospital when I gave back to him. That was 2001. And since that time, I've been taking care of this child. And my husband's office helped me in that area. My office also helped me. SCDA helped me. What I want to say in a nutshell is that when I went to England, I went to Israel, I went to US. When I became very ill, he started school in US free of charge. No money was taken from me. Some things were given to you free of charge. 10 teachers. So that's my child. 10 teachers. But when I was very ill, I have to come home. But when I came home, I decided that I will use my life, the remainder of my life, to take care of children with disability. So we formed an NGO. That NGO, my daughter could not get a job. I told my daughter to start running it. Then we started taking care of women and children. Then, and I told my daughter that we must get a place for children with disability. So she started going to Sobo, Jiwa, Otako, about 5 local governments. My daughter goes here and look for these children that doesn't go to school with disability.
Right.
So we now went to universal basic education.
Right.
That with what we have done, we went there and told them that they should give us a place where we can house these children and train these children with disability. Then with my experience, because
unfortunately, we have
to respect senior secondary school.
Right.
Not with SCDA.
Hello? Oh, sugar. I really want it because that's an experience of somebody who had to go through so much.
And thank you very much for calling and sharing that experience. Many people with disabilities were not born that way. So the founder of this foundation, my brother, was given an injection of expired injection, and from there, just like many other people. So, but what we're saying is that people are intelligent, as Pastor Ito has said. So part of what we've seen around, when you talk about cost, research has shown us that 30% organizations that employ people with disabilities have increased productivity by at least 30% in there. So when we look at cost, how much would you spend, a one-off cost, and to have 30% increase in productivity? I think it's to contextualize it for us stakeholders and business people to understand. And in any case, the law makes it mandatory. Before the law was signed in, it was a case of begging and pleading with the private sector. Now it is a case of you are compelled to do it. You've got 5 years to modify your existing building. If you're putting up any structure as of January this year when the law was signed, and we find out and it doesn't have those access, we can take you up on that. People can go to court on that, but we don't want to go that route. We want to go through the advocacy.
The law is in effect this year.
This year.
So henceforth now, you can actually get arrested.
You can get a fine of 1 million if you're a corporate organization. Imprisonment, 6 months imprisonment. If it's an individual, 100,000 or thereabout. But I want to touch on the skills that people with disabilities have. There's a scheme that we've put in place, looking at it and say, it's called the Enterprise Development Scheme, which we had a partner organization. It's a microfinance bank, let's say, if I can mention their name, because they believed in this concept initially. And they gave monies to people living with disabilities to start businesses, right? So some of them ride keke marwas and all that. We've got a documentary on it, which we've put together. And these guys have not defaulted. Not one of them defaulted on the loans given to them. They were given the loans at the existing rates as every other person, not a differential rate given to them. So believing in what they've done shows us that people with disabilities have extra skills that they can make things happen.
Okay, let's go on a quick break. When we come back, we'll continue this conversation. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Stay tuned. Your View will be right back. Welcome back to Your View.
Thanks for staying with us. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, so my question is, for a lot of the people that get help or are able to get employment, they usually are born in a particular sort of family, they're able to get education, but there are so many Nigerians living with disability. They are not even able to get food on their tables. They're not able to get educated. What is the plan for them? Does your foundation have anything that you do for those category of people living with disability?
This is exactly why we have come together. Like we said, the foundation was started originally by his younger brother, Boye, who in the process of it has gone to be with the Lord. And the whole essence is to bring all these people together to, first of all, love them, to show them that we love and we care and we're interested. Number two, to look after them as best as we can within the resources that we have. Those who want to get an education, help them get an education. Those who want a job or a skill, help them acquire a skill. And then also advocate for them, which is very important. Come to people like yourselves. You know, I had a guy too on a wheelchair. I was thankful that Stanbic IBTC, through Atedo, who is a friend of mine, was able to take him on, okay? I met him at a program in Lagos, in Alausa. He had nobody, nothing. And I picked him up, started looking after him, paid his medicals, everything. And then I spoke to Atedo. And now he's been there 5 years, regular chap, working well.
Smart.
They even bought him a wheelchair, electronic wheelchair. His life has changed. You understand? He has
Take this
become
call
somebody.
from Broad Street. Morning, are you there?
Good morning, Morayo.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Good morning. I think what we feel mostly with people living with disability is more of pity, which I think some or most of the time they don't need it. I remember back then when I was in secondary school, I went to FGC, Azare, Bauchi State. They brought in some students with, they were blind actually. And I noticed then that if you, as a normal person, tries to help them in anything, if the principal sees you, you will be beaten, you will be punished. Because they felt they should find their way, they should find themselves around the environment, and which I think is what they actually need. But if everybody keeps thinking these people will not be able to do this, it's because you have not given them a chance.
Yeah.
You've not given them a chance.
Thank you very
to
much.
prove themselves,
Yes, Dr.
which is
So-
what they actually need, especially in Nigeria.
No
Thank you
pity.
very much.
Fantastic.
Thank you, Abimbola. So I wanted to ask concerning parenting, because some parents give birth to children with disabilities, and some, they had able kids that through some form of accident, whatever, they become disabled and they don't know how to deal with it. So some of them are watching right now. What would you say to such parents or someone who knows someone who's going through that reality?
Well, I think it's important to be able to start having conversations that make issues of disabilities normal conversations. And I like what the caller I just called in said, that people should be inclusive. There should be that inclusivity or inclusion of people with disabilities, so that, for instance, we don't want, I personally, I don't like the concept of having to segregate certain children and say it's a school for the blind, it's a school for the deaf and all that. As much as it has its merits, what it does to society is that it doesn't help an average child to know how to integrate or how to relate. So my 9-year-old or 11-year-old child doesn't know how to. So when I become an HR manager in an organization, I don't even want to touch them because I've never known how to work with them. So parents themselves must feel free to be able to talk about it and have conversations. There's nothing wrong with that child. He's only living with some form of disability. There are much more people with mental disabilities that is not visible. People are
Hiding
going
behind a
on
good makeup.
depression, suicide around in there, behind the good makeup in there. So people, we're all disabled in one way or the other,
That's
if you
what I
can
was
use
gonna
that
say.
word.
Everybody has
it.
some
So we
form
should
of
be comfortable to
disability,
have the
yeah.
conversation with it and find how we can help them.
Yeah, so I worked in a school where they had special teachers to handle children living with disabilities, and some other schools do not have that means to get such teachers to handle them, because there are several, sometimes you need special teachers to attend to their
Yeah,
specific
you're right,
needs.
right.
So what are you doing? Are you partnering with schools to see how that can be possible?
Training teachers.
It's part of the conversations that we're having with the different stakeholders. So the summit we had last week, Tuesday, was about the implications for all stakeholders. So that includes schools as well. Because if a child spends a number of hours at school, the teachers also need to be taught how to deal with it. You need to know what kind of facilities you need to put in place, even for the school. So as a teacher, you're able to limit or
We have
to
to
work
round
with
up.
them.
Is there any last message you want to give to our viewers living with disabilities? Is there anything you want to? Is there any last message you want to give?
Well, we just want to say to people that generally, let's have the conversations going. Let's find other stakeholders. Let's make the issues around disability normal. Give them facilities. If you're a bank, if you're a financial institution, for instance, an employer of labor, make room, make space, because that's what the law says. So we're encouraging people to start engaging in the conversations now.
Finally,
because
who's going to be policing
5
these
years,
companies?
yeah.
Who's going to be policing to ensure that the companies are actually making?
Following up.
We will. You
amenities
see, all we
available?
need is just one scapegoat. As it were. One scapegoat,
Everybody
and
fall in line.
everybody will fall in line. Is it that we go through litigation, or we name and shame you via social media to say you're discriminating against people with disabilities,
All right.
and it goes viral?
That's all we can take. Thank you so much,
Thank you
Pastor
very
Ito. Thank you
much.
so
Thank
much,
you
sir,
so
for
much.
being here.
Thank you so much.
Such a pleasure.
Thank
So
you.
we'll definitely give you as much support as you need concerning
so
this
much.
project, all right?
Thank you.